that is being sponsored by Funding the Next Generation. And I founded Funding the Next Generation to help coalitions and advocates and elected officials around the state set up dedicated funding streams at the local level, at the county level or at the city level, because we had had such success in San Francisco doing that, where I've done most of my work heading a child advocacy organization, the city's Department of Children, and I could see what having a dedicated fund actually accomplished. So it's been hard for people. We've had a number of funds set up around the state, and our goal is to provide technical assistance in sponsoring people and create, sponsor learning communities, etc. But one of the big problems that we've had is that most discretionary local dollars at both the county and the city level go to what people call public protection or public safety. And at the city level, it's police and fire. At the county level, it's probation, sheriffs, jails, juvenile halls. And I would say in most counties and cities that comprises like 90% of the discretionary dollars. It's not true in some of the other places, but still it's the overwhelming bulk of dollars spent. And every time you suggest that something else, that we spend it on something else, everybody goes, oh, but it won't be safe. We need to prioritize public safety. So hence, we're going to talk about how we help redefine what public safety is. So we officially understand that it's really about prevention, about youth development, about doing the things that actually promote public safety. So I'm going to start with a poll. Claudia, shall we do a poll to see who's in the room? And this will only take a minute for you to do. Let's see.
It's launched.
Okay, what do you do? Oh, I see. Oh, you can see it as people do it.
It's like magic.
It's magic. So most people are sort of public policy advocates, organizations, nonprofit youth workers. Does that kind of do it? So you're sharing the results. And shall we stop? Claudia, stop sharing the results.
I think I stopped.
Oh, I still see it. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to what we have the most fabulous speakers, and I am so excited because I haven't heard them talk about this. So we have three just amazing people you're going to have the privilege to hear about. The first one is Jay Chenier, who is a member of the City Council of Sacramento. He has 38 years of working at the local and state level on public policies, worked on a number of public policy issues, like all public policy issues, economic development, health, education, youth development. He's had a role throughout government. He's been a legislative analyst. I presume that was at the state level. He's been the Assistant Secretary of Education for the governor, for Governor Davis. He's worked in the Senate Office of Research. He's been a businessman in catering and restaurants, and he's run a food bank. I'm sure he's done other things. He's also been on the Sacramento School Board for 8 years. And in 2007, he founded something called Capital Impact, which is a Sacramento-based consulting firm that does strategy and policy and capacity building. And then in 2010, he was elected to the City Council. I got to know him working on youth development issues. And I have to say, I've met a lot of local officials in my, working around the state now. to get people to try to start to increase funding for young people. He is the most persistent and consistent and devoted to this issue. And every time you meet a challenge, he is ready with an idea of what to do next. So this is his idea of what to do next. And he's going to tell you the history. It really is an inspiration. And I hope for everyone, because we've all struggled with, okay, it didn't work the first time. Well, maybe it didn't work the second time. What do we do next? So then I am thrilled to hear from D'Angelo Mack, who I have not met before. He's the Director of State Policy for Public Health Advocates, which is a wonderful state advocacy organization. He works on a variety of issues, health disparities, trauma. Okay. He is an organizer, a youth pastor, a trainer, a teacher, an advocate, and I don't want to forget he's also a playwright. Honestly, so his life's work, really, his passion and his mission is around violence intervention strategies, which I had actually never realized would use that term before. He's worked nationally. I think he's even worked internationally, and he's been associated with an organization called Health Alliance for Violence Intervention, where he's a senior advisor, but a lot of it is hospital-based intervention. So you work with young people. Tell me if I'm right about this, D'Angelo. You work with young people who've been sort of victims of or perpetrators of or both violence. You help them heal. You help interrupt a potentially next step. And it's very empowering for young people. He sits on committees locally and nationally that include my brother's keeper. And I never have met anybody who is on a committee of the American College of Surgeons, the Committee on Trauma. So I was really impressed by that. But you have to meet Sophia. You're going to get to. She's only 17 years old, and her list is as long as anybody else's. She is a youth advocate. She spent the better part of her 17 years working to have young people involved in decisions that impact them. And she was inspired by her siblings, her peers, and wanting to make sure they have a voice. Okay, get this. She is an activist. She is an entrepreneur. She's an organizer. She's an author. And she is a student. She is a student at Sacramento City College. She has a seat on two major sort of advisory committees, one at the county level in Sacramento, one at the city is it South Sacramento or West Sacramento? Both planning, both where she has a youth voice in planning, advising the city and the county. She is the founder of SAC Web Design, which is a nonprofit and provides designing services for other nonprofits. How do you be a founder of an organization this early in life? She is the creator of something called Gen Zero podcast, which is an entirely youth-produced and youth-driven podcast. And don't want to leave out that she's writing a book, which she hopes to publish within the year. So these are your three wonderful speakers. I'm thrilled to hear them. I'm going to stop screen sharing and turn this over to Jay and Claudia, who's going to start screen sharing. Right, Claudia?
Yes, if Jay is ready.
I'm ready. So let me just say a couple of things. First of all, Margaret, thank you for the introduction. And I want to thank D'Angelo and Sophia up front for all the work that they've done on this. I also want to give a shout out to Claudia Jason, who has worked with me on this project for over a year now. This is a group effort, and you'll hear more about that from D'Angelo about how we went about this and who was involved. But Margaret, I also want to thank you for your leadership in the state in really trying to move the ball forward on how we support our young people. It's so important. So thank you for doing that. What I want to do is I'm going to try to provide a little bit of context of how we got to where we are on this resolution. I'll turn it over to D'Angelo, who's going to talk about the process that we use to engage the community and really make this a bottoms-up resolution that will actually be coming to our city council a week from today. And then he's going to introduce Sophia, who's going to talk about youth engagement and how she participated in this as well. So that's our lineup. If you have questions, again, I think go into the chat box and Margaret will forward those to us as appropriate. We'd like to make it a little bit more of a discussion than just talking at you. I think we all have enough of that, particularly on Zoom these days. So for me, I've been on the city council for 10 years. I ran for the city council because I thought there was no voice for young people on the council. And I have continued to work on youth issues, really with the goal of making Sacramento, the city of Sacramento in this case, a youth-friendly city, one where we support our young people to be successful in school, career, and life. I think that we also don't think about young people as our sustainability. Hopefully they and Sophia listen to this very closely because you will be taking care of us sooner than you think. And that's a really important thing. But when we think about infrastructure and human infrastructure versus green buildings, we need to think about our young people as the sustainability of our communities. So what I have thought about, or how I think about the work we're doing in Sacramento to really create a youth-friendly city is in 3 tiers of work. First is policy and culture. So how do we create a culture where there are folks waking up every day thinking that youth are assets and that we need to do everything we can to support their success? We then need to think about the infrastructure in the city. Do we have the right people in the right places to support that? And then we need to think about resources. So maybe a couple of examples of both of that. We really, for my first probably 5-6 years, I was more or less alone on the council thinking that this was an important issue. As Mayor Darrell Steinberg was elected on a platform, one of 3 things he ran on was around supporting young people. I had a great ally and the council has come around. 2.5 years ago, we passed a youth development platform that said, this is what everything we do or fund should look like. These are the assets our young people need to be successful. And we want to make sure that those assets are embedded in everything we do. Again, whether we run a program or whether we fund it with a community-based organization. That's a process that we're going through. And it certainly involves a lot of training, a lot of discussions, but that was developed by about 40 youth serving organizations. So we've always tried where possible to make this a collaborative effort walking in the door. The second piece, as I said, let's go back for a second, was infrastructure. So we've done a few things. We had a Department of Parks. I wanted a Department of Youth. We settled for, negotiated a Department of Youth, Parks, and Community Enrichment. But we do have individuals now who wake up every day, their sole job being, how do I improve the lives of young people in my community? Infrastructure also includes training. We've done something called pop-ups in the last couple of years for Friday nights, and COVID has interrupted a lot of this, but we're doing our best. And so we need to train those youth providers in the youth development platform, in the assets that we're trying to bring to young people. Training can extend all the way to our police department, thinking about brain development of young men and what that looks like, so that we don't get ourselves into trouble because we haven't thought of thinking about the right things. It includes staffing and making sure we have enough people to do the job. And it includes a management capacity where we have managers who are making this an important issue to them. Our youth issues, as I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but youth issues have always gotten tucked under the rug when things are going hard, when we have budget problems or challenges. We need to make sure that those are elevated to the importance that everything else is. And then resources, both funding and programmatically. How are we providing what our young people need, particularly in these really difficult times? So I want to say, as you look at this, this is not just about programs. This is about systemic change, changing the way we think about young people, changing the way we do our budgeting, changing the way we approach this so that we keep youth at the forefront. This resolution, and go to the next slide now. This resolution is one piece of the puzzle as a whole. I started off, I think, with Margaret around a measure that would have taken revenues from cannabis and creating a youth fund. We lost by less than 1%. That was a 2/3 vote. You can see these are all items that we've taken along the way. I supported, and D'Angelo was instrumental in this, Measure G, which would have done a carve out from our general fund for youth. That also lost. We have something on the ballot in 2 weeks here that's called Measure A. A piece of Measure A would set aside at least $10 million a year for children and youth services. So we continue to do this, but we're continuing to add pieces to the puzzle. One of the most major things that we did is a year and a half ago, we created a ride-free RT program where all youth K-12 can ride our public transit system for free anytime, anywhere. So not just to get to school, not just to get to work, not just during the week, but anytime, anywhere. And we had increases of up to 160% on youth ridership. And that's stayed positive even through COVID, where we're doing that. But what this chart really is meant to show is it takes time, it takes effort, it takes losses sometimes, but you got to keep moving the ball forward. So again, this resolution is a piece of the puzzle. It's really about, I think, the city making a statement, the council making a statement saying, our youth are as important to us as anything else that we do. And why is this important? You know, this is a resolution. It's a piece of paper with a bunch of words on it. I think it's a tool that I want to use as we move forward into our budget process, and as we move forward into a long-term vision for the city. Where do young people fit into that vision? So I think it's much more than a piece of paper. We have tried to go through a long process here, and I'm going to let D'Angelo talk about that. But I do want to note that we started off by presenting to the Youth Commission in Sacramento. They've had 2 shots at this. We also presented to our Measure U, which is our extra sales tax dollars, that took a look at this. And then we recently presented to our Police Commission as well. We're trying to make this a very collaborative effort because, again, it's not just about jamming something down. It's really about changing a culture, changing the way we systemically think about young people. And so, again, this has been a joint effort. So what I want to do is turn it over to D'Angelo now to talk a little bit about the process, and we'll go from there.
Can I interrupt you for a minute? Because
Yeah,
I mean, are we going to get to sort of what the kind of opposition you've had? And can you tell people what's in the thing? You know,
Yeah.
or is D'Angelo going to do that? Because
I think
it's more than just a sentence. It's a pretty detailed thing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think D'Angelo will talk about how we got to what the resolution looks like, which I think is important because there was a good process there. And we have not got into a lot of opposition yet. I look forward to some, I think, because we'll get there at the end on the politics of it, if we can. But D'Angelo, why don't you go ahead and talk about what's in it and how we got there?
Sure thing. First, I just want to thank you, Margaret, for the invite to this wonderful space, and of course the lifting up of the work that I've done. This has been my heart's work, my life's work for the last 20 years, working with youth and lifting up their voices and the importance of their hearts around what community means. For these are all of our children. We will either profit by or pay for what they become. The great James Baldwin said that. We have been working on this public safety resolution for some time with the important standpoint of bringing this to the forefront by community hands. So a brief history: in July of 2019, public health advocates begin to have conversations around the meaning of public safety and its effectiveness on the overall community, its overall health, and its well-being. For many, many years, public health advocates has been a leader in working with marginalized communities and individuals and supporting the efforts and lifting their voices. For the last, 6 months, or the first 6 months, I should say, of that resolution forming, we had the great opportunity to meet with community members and have town hall forums to discuss what public safety meant to individuals. As we were researching and looking into how we reimagine public safety, what we quickly realized was that the city of Sacramento, as well as the state and even the country, hadn't defined what public safety meant from a community standpoint. This resolution, we found, would be key, innovative, and the first of its kind. So Jay's work and Claudia's work and our partners' work, this is all fresh and new. This Sacramento will be lifting up this actual work and moving this work as the leaders around how we define public safety. What we noticed was communities around the state, including Sacramento, only define public safety as police and fire and emergency medical services, where we know that responding to emergencies is greater than a police response. It involves community, it involves programs to reduce violence and increase safety. And we heard that loud and clear from our young people. One of the greatest things that we were able to do was hold these listening campaigns with young people to really hear their voice and learn from them what public safety meant. The work that I do with public health advocates is around state policy, and that's, of course, working with the most marginalized. But before that, I spent 10 years, as Margaret alluded to, doing hospital-based violence intervention work. And through that work, the 10 years that I spent that time working with over 900 families who had been affected by violence, either young people being shot or stabbed or severely assaulted. And I had firsthand experience touching these families and these individuals. And they defined safety a lot different than those whose the current definition affords safety to. And so one of the things working with those young individuals, our program was designed to make sure that young people didn't re-injure. And we had a tremendous success rate. 98% of our clients didn't re-injure, right? And that was great. It was beautiful. But sitting in the office with my colleague and good friend, Karma Paul Dhaliwal, she challenged me and said to me, D'Angelo, yes, your clients are not re-injuring, but are they being liberated? And I believe that with this resolution, we're moving into a time of liberation, a time of activation for our communities and more so for our young people. Jay's heart, as well as mine and many others, is around creating a future with the youth voice, making that foundation real, right? So often we are building futures for our young people without asking them what they want their futures to be. And so with that, I'll stop talking now and come back a little later. I want to hear from one of our current leaders, but more so one of our future leaders, as she's going to shine tremendously in our near future. So I'm gonna hand it over to Sophia, and if she could just share a little bit, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful to hear what young people said in those meetings that you had, you know, how they did define it and how that ended up actually in your resolution, which is the wording of which is very powerful, and we may want to read it at some point. So go, Sophia.
And Margaret, we're definitely going to cover that towards the end here. So folks will be able to hear some of the things that young people said that we received, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the resolution.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, D'Angelo. So yes, as it's been said, youth have been very engaged throughout this entire process, from the beginning of the draft to giving feedback on it. I know particularly me and I think a couple of other 40 youth had the opportunity to engage in sessions with these adults who really wanted to hear our opinions on the subject. One of them was through Impact SAC, which is a nonprofit organization in Sacramento, where we had the opportunity to really interview Chief Hahn, the chief of police, and tell him what we thought about public safety. And what we thought about public safety was really hit in this proposal, in this resolution we've seen. So that was incredible for us. Additionally, I believe it was Claudia Jason who invited us to these public safety prep meetings, where we would not only be prepped with the skills we needed to announce our voices and our opinions during the actual public resolution meetings, but also it just gave us more background, and it helped us digest what this 7-page document really was. And what it really was ultimately was everything we want as youth. We want the space and we want the development to really succeed in our future. So this public safety document, this resolution, has been everything. And our hope collectively is that it not only impacts Sacramento teens and Sacramento youth, but everywhere across the nation as well. So Jay Chenier, D'Angelo, Margaret, this is amazing. We want this structure to be implemented in every city where youth live. I'm honestly surprised as to why it's only been proposed now. In the entire history of the United States, we get this, but better late than never. Yes, we had a lot of proceedings. It was great, and we really enjoyed being involved heavily throughout this whole process. The opportunity was there. We gave some comments on it, and most of them were involved. So it's been awesome. I'm open for any questions.
How many youth were involved, and how many?
Maybe D'Angelo, you could talk a little bit about how many, you know, organizations, how many young people, and then like what's actually in the content of this, so people understand what we're trying to pass here. You're muted. Sorry.
Thanks. We said that should be on a T-shirt. You're muted. We use that so often now. You're muted. Thanks, Jay. So in doing this, starting, we had over 35 organizations join us in the effort of crafting this actual resolution. We had 15 organizations / programs that allowed youth or invited youth to sit at the table and help us to craft this actual resolution. I do want to share just some of the things that were asked. When we were sitting with young people, we asked some questions. One, we asked, how would you define safety? 2, how would you describe feeling safe? 3, what do you need to feel safe or safer? And 4, does the resolution reflect your definition of safety? And I just want to share, if I can, just some of the feedback that we got from young people. J.M. wrote, when we define safety, I think most people have a tendency to only look at what their environment looks like and physical safety, i.e., is there anything in my immediate vicinity that can harm me? Am I being physically harmed? Safety to me means more than just providing care to a danger only seen on the surface. True safety, true public and equitable safety comes from fostering environments that will not and cannot allow danger and compromise the mental, physical, and systemic security of the people in the public. Now, these are all young people. MC shared, it's difficult to describe feeling safe. I rarely feel safe unless I'm in my home. Safety for me feels like freedom to live. It feels like I can breathe, nothing that there is no malice intent within the systemic structures from which I abide, and those we have hired and elected to protect actually follow through with that oath. Another, you said, safety in action looks like resources and opportunity to provide such safety that is community-based and ran. Strict accountability to those who take up the position to protect the people. In order for myself to feel more safe, I believe the community must be centralized, not the government. So these are just a few examples of what youth said in our listening campaigns to help craft the actual resolution. In the resolution's language, I did the best to have this up for you. Here we go. In the resolution's language, I just want to point out some of the background that was written by young people. So lifting up our youth development campaign plan, in December 2017, the city of Sacramento, in recognizing that youth need particular conditions in place to feel safe, passed a citywide youth development campaign plan that strives to create a safe environment, both physically and emotionally, in all settings, honoring culture and community, and to promote equity, justice, accountability, and a concerted application of resources. Sacramento's young people describe today's environment created by the pandemic, ongoing protest, police brutality, and racism as chaotic, traumatic, isolating, lonely, painful, stressful, distressing, frustrating, and life-changing. Many of Sacramento's young people rarely feel safe. Youth would define safety as having the freedom to live and thrive in a community environment that has the capacity and structure to protect and support their well-being socially, physically, mentally, and economically. The city of Sacramento acknowledges the generations of genocide, structural racism, and oppression embedded in the policies and practices such as segregation, intentional economic exclusion, restrictive housing covenants, discriminatory employment, community suppression tactics, criminalization, mass incarceration, have created these conditions young people face that perpetuate violence, crime, and other risks to public safety. This resolution affirms that the city establishes the definition of public safety to encompass the delivery of police, fire, emergency medical services, and expand the definition to include emergency management, operations services, and youth-focused prevention services offered by the city and in partnership with community-based organizations and youth. So that's some of the language in the resolution, and we'll of course share this resolution with you. And I guess we'll go from here back to questions or comments.
Yeah, let me just kind of wrap up this, and then any questions people have would be greatly appreciated, and we'll do our best to answer. I mean, bottom line here is you think about public safety, you think about police, which have, none of this is telling police or fire how to do their jobs. This is saying it's not enough. If you want to have a safe community, if you want people to feel safe in their homes and their community and their neighborhoods and their city, you have to do more. And you have to include in that the prevention services so our young people have what they need to be successful. So that's kind of the bottom line on this. What does this mean, and what do we want to do with it? I want a stake in the ground because we don't have a kids union in our city. So we don't have contracts with kids. We need to really make that commitment as a city that this is as important to our future as anything else. And because public safety is the #1 issue for cities, we need to redefine that to include young people and those prevention services. rest assured, when we pass this next week, we move on to our budget process. We move on to how we spend money. I want this to be a topic of discussion of saying, we made this commitment, we need to now fulfill it. So we're open to any questions that you might have. I'm looking at Kelly's question, and Margaret, I don't know if you want me to look at them. What is the best way?
Well, I was going to look at them, but you're welcome to. But I think that Kelly's question gets to the point. So how can people on this call and people that were trying to move the needle sort of get started with their
Right.
either their county governments or their city governments? And I think that it can apply to both. And of course, I'm always interested in how you're going to translate this to money and to reallocating our resources.
Yeah. Well, I know Flo-Jean Kofer, who's head of public health advocates, and D'Angelo would be more than willing, if I can talk for you guys for a second, just to help any community get started. I mean, this kind of came out of our office, but we very quickly realized it needed to be a community effort and not just me going out and saying, this is what we need. We need the folks, as in most things, who are most impacted by a policy to be the ones that change the policy to make it better. So I think that calling public health advocates, and I know Flo had put their address in the chat box. Talk to Flo and D'Angelo, I'm sure they'll help you. My vision has always been that Sacramento is a leader on this, but this gets taken up by cities and counties across the state. And even at the state level, this would be a good thing. There was another question on how we work with the police department. So I very early on passed this into the hands of our police chief as well as our fire chief, just hoping to mitigate any negative responses I might get over time. I think that both of those individuals understand the value of prevention. We've also given it to the woman who is the head of our new Office of Community Responsibility, which is how we're looking at reinventing the police department. She was very supportive. We gave it to our Office of Public Safety and Accountability. We have a new individual there. She was also very supportive. So I did not have an expectation that police or fire would come out with a public statement on this. They got enough on their hands right now, but I'm hoping that they're at least neutral and potentially supportive along the way.
Till you get to the money. So I wanted to ask Sophia, related to questions people are asking is, how do you keep youth engaged in this process, especially during a pandemic? I don't know if this process was happening during the pandemic. And another question is how a youth commission, a lot of our cities and counties have youth commissions, how they could initiate a process like this.
As I see it, there are two approaches you can take based on two distinct types of individual youths. The first of which are youth who are already interested in civic engagement and who are looking for the opportunity to really be involved. And the second is a type of youth that really doesn't know anything about what the process is or may not be as interested. So the approach to each would be slightly similar. You simply make that opportunity known throughout every single organization you can get into contact with. That's how I found out about this and was able to get involved. That's basically it. Yeah. Reach out there.
Are you familiar? Are you a member of the Youth Commission, or do you know anything about the Sacramento Youth Commission?
I know there's a Sacramento County's Commission and a Sacramento City's Commission.
So what could a youth commission do?
I think that they would be the ones to actually look into the youth and actually branch out there. I'm not involved in any youth commission.
So let me just say that part of my goal, and we didn't really put it on the timeline, was to help transform our youth commission in the city from being, a group of young people that would go out on projects and clean up a park or whatever, to a real policy body. I have very intentionally gone to the youth commission on this item twice, on many other items. I've encouraged our city staff and our management in the city to go before the youth commission. Again, this is changing culture. We actually did a joint meeting between the city council and the youth commission, which to me was probably the best evening I've had as a city council member in 10 years. The young people were just fabulous. They had worked very hard to create their issues, which were around student mental health and safety and others. The council responded by putting millions of dollars of our CARES money into those issues that the Youth Commission had talked about. So I think it's a process here of involving them. And we had, for example, the vice chair of our Youth Commission come and speak before our Law and Legislation Committee on another item that we're talking about, putting youth on our seats, youth seats on our boards and commissions. So it's just intentionally going out and involving them. And I know we'll be successful when we're no longer surprised at how smart they are, but that it's just a matter of course.
How long did the whole process go on?
Yeah,
D'Angelo,
we've been working well over a year on this with a COVID break in the middle. So I would say, I don't know, Claudia is probably the best to answer this, but I would say probably 8 to 9 months of work on this, involving the community and going to all the boards and commissions that we went to get a positive answer.
And the community never really stopped. We started this in July of 2019. COVID, of course, ramped up or hit in March, but there were still, and Claudia can attest to this, we were still engaging with young people and having conversations around what safety meant. And even more so, I think conversations began to happen because of the unrest around racial tensions and police brutality. Young people really wanted to talk about these things. And so in our respective organizations and respective corners of the city, we were having discussions around public safety. So since July of 2019 to now, we've just been moving pretty steadily in this redefining.
And I actually think it's helped us. One is it's allowed us to do this correctly. The resolution has gone through numerous iterations, but also the timing is right now with what the city is trying to do around police reform, around inclusive economic development. This is a piece of that puzzle that I think will garner more support than had we done this as a one-off, to be honest with you.
I want to ask about, it's coming up, it hasn't passed yet, right? So I have one question is like, what role will young people play, in this end game? Will they be testifying, and is that something young people are excited about doing? And then what the afterward is going to look like. What happens next? It's nice to have the resolution on paper. So whoever wants to take those questions.
D'Angelo, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So currently we are ramping up for Tuesday, the 27th, 5 p.m. for all of that are wondering, the city council vote. Prior to that, like this week, even right after this call, our planning committee and young people are in meetings with city council members. Our next meeting is right after this meeting, an hour or so after this meeting with the mayor and his office, just to really, pour out our hearts around what this resolution is, answer any questions that they might have, and make sure we assure and I vote. During, our planning sessions, we are ramping up with young people to present on the 27th through calling in to support, sending emails, and using social media. We have a group of young people currently working on TikTok videos for this resolution to pass. And so I'm very excited about our young people and their motivation around this. And to what Jay said about, it'll be a great day when we realize just how articulate and wonderful our young people are. It's funny, I've had people come to me and say, I don't know if I could support this because I feel like young people can't write like this or didn't write these things. And I'm just like, meet Sophia. or meet the rest of our folks. Young people really have a lot to say, and hopefully we'll hear them on the 27th when they call in.
Let me add one kind of, so that's all good, and we'll have a lot of young people testifying. We do our city council meetings on Zoom, so that's, you know, tragic on this. I would wish that we could pack the chambers with young people for this, which I know we would if the circumstances were different. You know, I wanted to add one thing in that, as I said, we went to the Youth Commission. It was a great discussion, great questions. They put their input into it. We then went to our Measure U committee, where it was interesting because both at our Measure U committee, which we had not done a lot of advance work on.
Will you tell them what Measure
and
U
our,
is?
Measure U is we passed a penny sales tax. And so we created a public committee to help advise us along the way. It's a whole nother topic we won't go into, but as Flo is laughing over there, we've had some challenges. But both at the Measure U committee and then at the Police Commission, which we had done some prep work on, you know, we had challenges. We had a lot of pushback to this, which we never anticipated. And so I want to stress that if others take this up, doing your homework and not making assumptions, because this is a little bit difficult sometimes for people to comprehend. And frankly, when we went to our Law and Legislation Committee, one of my colleagues, I think, just didn't get it, like what we were trying to do here, and did not have the confidence in young people that they could sit on a board and commission or participate in this. So take nothing for granted on this. But I do really respect the work that D'Angelo and others have done with young people, meeting with our city council people. I can't do it because of the Brown Act, but they can certainly go talk to folks and make sure that they're in the right place.
Somebody asked how many adults you have meeting with youth and prepping them. D'Angelo, do you want to take that?
Yeah, it definitely varies depending on organizations. Like I said, we have over 35 organizations that we've been working with, and then we have some youth-focused programs who, you know, have a large population of young people. So it really does vary as far as ratio between adult and young people. I know, like MBK, My Brother's Keeper, is a youth-focused program, and we have, of course, more young people than we do adult advocates, right? Same with Advanced Peace, same with, you know, some of these other youth programs, Black Child Legacy as one of them. So it really just depends as far as, you know, organization for a program.
But the adults in those programs also got really invested in this, I gather from what you're saying, and started working with the young people around this whole process.
Very much so. I think a key to success is working with organizations who have historically worked or been youth-focused or youth-led. Those actual program organizations normally get it. They understand the value of youth voice and the power of youth voice, and can help to lead and guide and hand over the reins, if you will, to the young folk.
Do you want to say anything else, Sophia, about, you know, the excitement of this among young people and what you, the role your podcast might play in this, and why, you know, the different kinds of strategies you plan to use in the next 2 weeks to engage young people?
So the podcast, we always hear that youth need a voice, and the podcast was simply the auditory way of doing that.
Oh.
But in regards to any further comments about the resolution, I'm just super excited, as well as a lot of other youth, excited to see what this will tangibly create in our community. If we can have some kind of benefit from that, that'll really just legitimize everything we've felt and validate everything we've seen and we've heard and everything like that. So it's just an amazing step. It's great progress.
I see Albert has talked about a new episode. I don't know, Albert, if you can unmute yourself and tell people about it. If you're still there. Okay, it's in the chat. An episode of City Rising, a focus on youth democracy. So does anybody like want to say more about the politics of this and the next steps and how you're going to, how long you think it'll take before there's more money for youth as a result of this? Jay?
Yeah. I mean, the politics, I'm kind of an incrementalist on the politics. So we've made it through all the commissions. And as Flo just said, a lot of the pushback was not opposition, but I think for me, a little bit about a lack of understanding of what we were trying to do and how this fit into the larger picture. For the city council, we have 9 members, including the mayor. So I need to be able to count to 5 and get 5 votes for this. I can only talk to 3 folks at once because of the Brown Act, but given a unanimous vote that we had at our Law and Legislation Committee and others, I feel pretty safe that this will pass. However, I would love to get to a unanimous vote. I think it's much stronger as a policy statement from the council if everybody is on the same page on this. And then we'll probably need to work it a little bit. We will have 2 new council members coming on board in December as a result of one, the election in June, and the other an election in 2 weeks here. So we'll have to kind of backtrack a little bit and then move forward. I think the politics for me, are a few fold. One is there are many things that we need to do. Again, this is a piece of the puzzle. It's not the entire thing. And we need to keep pushing forward on multiple fronts. We need to kind of expand those who are talking about it and those who are allies and advocates. So it's not, oh, there's Shanira again saying we need to think about youth when we do this. It needs to be others coming forward, and voices like Sophia's are just so important, testifying before the council and letting them know, what's important here to young people, and having the Youth Commission come and do that as well, because they're just so smart about this. So I feel like we're good for next week. Anyone who wants to support us, let us know, and we're happy to send you the results once that happens and that vote happens. But again, I think it's continuing to push forward. The next piece of the puzzle for us, as I said before, is getting youth on our boards and commissions. So we have 3 commissions that we want to start with. Those were selected by the Youth Commission. We've gone through our Law and Legislation Committee, and that will be coming to council later in the year as well. So thinking about all these different pieces that you need to move forward on, so that you are changing a culture and systemically changing the way people react towards young people. I really want to, I know we're running out of time here, but I just want to say thank you for doing this. And Margaret, again, thank you for your leadership statewide in all of this. If you have questions I know that Flojan and D'Angelo have their addresses in the chat. If you want to talk to us about what we're doing, you could email Claudia at this address. But I think this is a group effort, and I love talking to the choir. It takes a lot. And I want to give one other shout out. I know the California Endowment is in the audience, Christine Tien. She helped us get started on a lot of these youth issues. So again, this is a joint effort. It literally takes a village, and I'm happy to be living in one right now. So thank you so much.
And funding the next generation will continue to follow this, and because it's exciting work, and this is the middle, not the end. I am so grateful to the 3 of you, our speakers, for doing this and sharing this information. I gather from the chat that a lot of people are very excited about it, and will be sending out as much information as we get, and including maybe the link to because I met you D'Angelo, by watching you testify at the last hearing, and the city does allow you to sit in on the hearings and watch. And they also have tapes of it, so we can send out the link to the tape of the hearings and see how this goes. I think that unless any of our speakers want to say, here's how you can get in touch with me for more information. And this is our webinar coming up, which is about some very exciting health work happening in Fresno, which has been all about redesigning a public health system based on the grassroots community outreach. So if you want to participate in that, that will be very exciting. And does anybody else have anything that they want to say in closing? D'Angelo, Jay, Sophia?
I'm good.
I'm good too. Thank you so much, Margaret, for the space, and thank you for all of you guys joining, and thank you, Sophia, for your awesomeness.
Yeah, everybody was awesome. It's 1 o'clock, so I think we are gonna end. And thank you all so much for participating.
Likewise, credit to D'Angelo, Claudia, Jay, and Margaret. You guys are awesome. Thank you for.
And I will write your college application if you want. Sophia asked me. Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you, guys. I think I will end the meeting.
Good job, Margaret.